Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Terminator Genisys. And this movie came out in 2015, and it has Arnold Schwarzenegger, Emilia Clarke, Jai Courtney, Jason Clarke, and this movie was a mess, to say the least. And the only reason I watched it was because it was just on Netflix, and I was like, oh, I'm already paying for it, so I might as well just check it out just to see how it is. And if I also review this movie, then I will have reviewed all of the Terminator movies on my channel. And I've reviewed everything up until this point. The only thing I haven't really touched on is like the TV series Terminator the Sarah Connor Chronicles at this point. So I might get to that someday, I might not, who knows. But anyways, Terminator Genisys, I saw this movie once in theaters and haven't really thought about it since. And all I remembered was that I didn't like it, really, and this movie was really bad because rewatching it, I was kind of surprised at how bad this movie was, and it just tries to be everything that the first two movies were, but it just misses what made those movies good. And to start off, this movie kind of has a different approach to the franchise, and it's kind of more of a remake more than anything else, and it's kind of just doing its own thing, whereas like everything after Terminator 2 was just trying to capitalize off of the success of those first two movies, and Terminator 3 was just trying to be a copy of the first two movies, and it doesn't really work. Terminator Salvation tried to be in the middle of the war and like show you what was going on there, and that I didn't care for. And this one, the angle that it takes is that it's trying to explain time travel, which is kind of weird because while this franchise does have time travel in it, it doesn't really bother explaining it because at the end of the day it's not going to make any sense. So it just kind of touches on it and just goes along, and you're just supposed to kind of fill in the gaps as to like what might have gone on, and it doesn't really drag the movies down really for the most part. But my issue with this one is that the more they try to explain what's going on in the timeline, the less it makes sense, and it just becomes very convoluted and unnecessary really, because it's just exploring something that's not very interesting, and there isn't really a whole lot of action in the movie, especially for a Terminator movie, or at least maybe I'm just not remembering a lot of action that lasts for very long. And all of the action in the movie is completely unengaging, and I hate the characters in this movie, and it's all the same characters from the first film, but it just makes them completely unlikable. The romance feels completely forced, and it doesn't help that, like I said already, I hate the characters. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was like the best part of the movie for me, and J.K. Simmons, because I felt as though they were trying to make this movie work, whereas everyone else, they just like didn't really care that much, if you ask me, and they were kind of phoning it in. And Jai Courtney was awful as Kyle Reese. I never once bought him as the character. And Emilia Clarke, well, I have seen season 1 and half of season 2 of Game of Thrones, and I do think she's good in that show. I didn't buy her as Sarah Connor. I never believed her character, and she was just kind of distracting and annoying. And Jason Clarke, he was fine in it. He didn't do anything particularly great or terrible. He was just fine the entire time, and I really don't care what they did to his character. And this movie tries to be everything at once in a weird way. Like, it has the T-800, it has the T-1000, and it takes place in the 80s, it takes place in 2029, and then it goes to 2017, and it has all these different things going on, and it doesn't have enough time to make all these things satisfying or develop them properly. And even what we do get, it's just, alright, we have this, but what are we supposed to do with it? Like, I was just completely checked out. Like, the first half of the movie I think is better than the second half. Not that that's saying a whole lot, but I will say that much, because at least it was kind of fun that like, oh, we're in the 80s, like I'm kind of brought back to like this time period. And it was something, I guess. I don't know. Like, it wasn't getting too stupid with, like, explaining all the time travel crap that I don't need, and that's definitely, I guess, the best stuff in the movie. But it really falls apart in the second half where it's just overly convoluted and nothing really makes any sense. I hate the music in the movie as well. It's just generic action movie music, or they just spam the, I guess, Terminator theme or anything that's part of that Terminator theme, and just like does its own thing, and it's just awful. I hate it so much. And this was also like the first attempt in this franchise to be a Marvel movie, because there's a mid-credit scene and there's lots of humor that the movie throws in, and only a couple of jokes kind of landed for me, and the rest of the comedy fell flat, and it was just, why are we doing this? This just feels unnecessary. Not that you're not allowed to have comedy in a Terminator movie, but it just felt like it was thrown in because that's what a Marvel movie does, and this movie is also PG-13 for some reason, and I guess it was trying to appeal to everyone, and it didn't really work, I guess, because after this movie, this whole timeline, I guess, if you want to call it that, is just gone. So, and also on top of that, they just made Terminator Dark Fate, which is I guess the new Terminator 3, if that makes sense, because everything between Terminator 2 and that movie is just doesn't exist anymore. I guess I'll talk about the action and why it doesn't really work for me is because it felt a little too video gamey to me, and when it's like, I guess, hand-to-hand combat, sometimes it's okay, most of the time it's not, and the special effects aren't very convincing, and the T-1000, he doesn't look great, and it's not the worst thing in the world because it's all at night, luckily, but whenever you can see a Terminator in broad daylight, it doesn't look great, sadly, or if the environment's really bright. If it's kind of dark, then it looks okay, but anything in the lights, it looks bad. I also wasn't really a big fan of how this movie looked. Everything kind of just had this weird glow to it, and it just felt like a studio set the entire time, and that was very distracting. And this movie is just broken, and nothing really makes any sense, and the movie is way too long, and once we get into the second half of the movie, that's when the movie really gets completely dull, and halfway through the movie is when, I guess the plot and stakes are, officially set up for the movie, and you don't even meet the main antagonist until halfway through the movie. And for a Terminator movie, that's kind of weird. Normally, it's, within the first 10 minutes, but not here. In this movie, you have to wait, almost an hour to even meet him. And once you do, it's okay, yes, now we have him. He's not really intimidating to me. And that's about all I have to say about Terminator Genisys. It's awful. Probably my second least favorite Terminator movie. That should probably come as no surprise, because after T2, everything just went downhill, and some of the sequels, I guess, after T2 are better than others, but that's not really saying a whole lot, because none of them are good, if you ask me. And I'm not even sure which the best one is. Maybe Terminator Dark Fate, but I haven't seen that movie in forever, and I've almost completely forgotten about it. Either that or Terminator Salvation. But I can't even recommend Salvation, because that movie's just boring, and nothing interesting ever happens, and if you see the trailers for any of these movies, then the entire movie is spoiled for you, so if you want to check these movies out, then just watch the trailer. And for those who are curious, my least favorite Terminator movie is Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, and while technically that's my least favorite, I would say that movie is more entertaining to me than this movie. Terminator 3 is a really funny bad movie, but at the same time, every minute I can find something wrong with it, and the more I think about it, the more flaws that I find, and it just makes me angry by the end of the day. And I could probably go on for 2-3 hours complaining about Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and how they just screwed everything up. And, yeah, but that'll probably be for another time. So, but anyways, Terminator Genisys, not as bad as Terminator 3, not funny bad like that movie, except for a couple moments, but it's just a lot more boring than that movie. So skip this one if you ever come across it, because it's not worth your time. If you really want to check it out, just watch the trailers, because they tell you everything you need to know. And with all that being said, I'm going to give Terminator Genisys a 2 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you thought of Terminator Genisys, and my social media links. They will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for The Jerk. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.